Good morning. It's good to be with you again this morning. Continuing to build on the four pillars of a healthy Christian business leader. The four pillars are healthy relationships, biblical financial value, biblical spirituality, and balanced living. This week we're focusing on pillar number 1, and which is healthy relationships. The series for this week is Mothers and Their Day. So that's the series, and then for today we're focusing on your mom and how she impacts your relationships. Again, this week as we're heading towards Mother's Day, at least here in Canada and the US and many parts of the world, Mother's Day is this coming Sunday. I thought it would be good to focus on mothers and the impact that they've had on our relationships, because I think far too often we underestimate that. So my mom had 12 children. One passed away very young, well before I was born. She was the 3rd child, and I was the 11th child. And so basically I grew up in a home with 10 siblings, 3 brothers and 7 sisters. And most nights in my early years, there would be 13 of us around the table, plus some friends usually, or quite often. And so, there would be a huge crew of us together. My mom would cook and prepare the food for all of us. Now, my mom's influence on me was huge. She lived out her Christian life, her faith, in a quiet way. My mom did not have higher education. In fact, she had to leave school, I believe, out of grade 6. So she went as far as grade 6, and then her mom had illness, and my mom, being the youngest at the time, ended up having to stay home from school and take care of her mother until her mother passed. And then my mother got married to my dad, and she just never went back to school. Nevertheless, she was a wise and godly woman. And being a wise and godly woman, there were many that would come to her and seek advice from her. And she would give them advice that would be helpful and encouraging and strengthening and build them up. She's been with the Lord now for about 23 years. But when you think about your mother, and I think about my mother, what we often underestimate is the impact that our mothers have on us. I know oftentimes people talk about, the things I learned, in kindergarten. Those are the things that basically shaped me. And that's true to an extent, I guess, if you went to kindergarten. In my case, I didn't go to kindergarten. I started school in grade 1. That was kind of the way it was back in my day. And you could go to kindergarten, but my mom's thing was, why would she do that? Kindergarten was kind of like daycare back in those days. That's changed now, I think, but back in those days it was definitely the issue. And so anyways, needless to say, when people say, well, even in our day and age, when people say, well, kindergarten shaped me, the reality is there was someone shaping you before you ever went to kindergarten. And so our relationship with our spouse, our children, friends, co-workers, neighbors, they've all been shaped to some extent by our relationship, the relationship that we have or have had with our mom. If your mom is still alive, that relationship is still impacting you today. And if your mom has passed, well, actually that relationship is still impacting how you react and relate to others, even to this day. And for me, 23 years later, it is still impacting me. Now, my mom, she was a kind and patient person, willing to serve in any way she could. And so her ways have influenced me, and basically they've influenced me in how I deal with people on a day-to-day basis. And again, I just as I reflect on that, I can't help but think about how your mom has impacted your life. Now, the Apostle Paul talks about 2 influences in Timothy's life, 2 women who had a major impact in his life. In 2 Timothy chapter 1, verse 5, we read this: I am reminded of your sincere faith. So he's talking to Timothy, saying, Timothy, I'm reminded of your sincere faith, which first lived in your grandmother Lois and in your mother Eunice, and I am persuaded now lives in you also. So there's 4 things I really want to just point out here. And this is, I think, very significant when we think about, mothers in their day and the impact that our mothers have on us. First of all, their faith was sincere. And so that to me is a significant thing when we think about the impact that our mothers have. What they believe will impact us. And how they lived will impact us. And their way of thinking impacts us. In Timothy's case, both his grandmother and his mother had sincere faith. They really believed in Jesus. They accepted him, they trusted in him, and they loved him. But they did more than just have that sincere faith. They passed it on. Lois passed it on to Eunice, and Eunice passed it on to Timothy. And I'm sure Lois had an impact in Timothy's life, and so grandmothers can still have an influence as well in the grandchildren's lives. And I think, that's vitally true. It made Timothy into the kind of man of faith that he was. Paul says, I'm reminded of your faith, Timothy. And he says, and I'm persuaded now that it also lives in you. The same faith that your grandmother had and the same faith that your mother had, it now lives in you. And so that was true of Timothy. So the first, again, they had faith, sincere faith. They passed it on. And it was very evident in Timothy's life that he now was a man of faith because his mother and grandmother were women of faith. And then the 4th thing is this: Timothy was a man mature beyond his years. Paul talks about that. He tells Timothy later on, he says, don't let people look down on your youthfulness. Just because you're young doesn't mean you're not mature. And in his case, I would argue that the maturity comes from the fact that he was taught well by his mother and his grandmother. So today, as you go about your day, think about the influence that your mom has had on your life or is having on your life, good or bad. Good or bad. Think about that. What is the influence your mother is having on your life? Because she is, and she has. And then may we recognize that we can take the good things and honor our mother. We can honor her with them by living out those good things that she taught us and demonstrated to us. And we can honor her for them, being thankful for the things that she has imparted to us that will strengthen us and encourage us for the rest of our lives. May the Lord bless you. Have a great day, and I'll see you again tomorrow.